Computer. Lovely. Okay, Dark Bleatings, everybody. You might remember that a few months ago I had the pleasure of dragging Eric LaRocca onto this channel, and I have successfully managed to convince him to come back, just with a series of threats and, the usual. Um, Specifically to talk about your upcoming book, Eric. So thank you so much for being here and for joining us again.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to chat with you again, and I'm really excited that you enjoyed the book and, appreciate it for what it is. It's a really upsetting, unpleasant sort of book, but I watched your review and I feel like you totally understood what I was going for, and, I that means a lot to me.
Oh, well, it was such a pleasure to read. So, I was very lucky to get an early copy, an advance copy of this. So We Are Always Tender with Our Dead is the title, by the way, before I excitedly just start yattering on about it. I personally think that this is your strongest piece of work so far.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, it's so I have to start just by telling people the part of the you've got a full page sort of warning slash disclaimer that really cracked me up. Um just because it's not like funny, but you wrote it's my unfortunate task to warn you that the book you are about to read is profoundly distasteful. It's certainly not a book that can or even should be enjoyed. That cracked
Yeah.
me up because I enjoyed it so much. So I don't know what that says about me.
I love that. I mean, I think for the people who are like into what we're into, I feel like it will be enjoyable for them. But for the
Mhm.
average sort of reader, like the lay person who's, encountering horror, transgressive sort of fiction, maybe for the first time, I mean, this could be something that would be very upsetting for them. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
there's I the way I've been describing this to people when I've been raving about it is that people put you in the extreme horror category, and I think that transgressive horror maybe is a better term actually because I
that's
think
what I prefer. Yeah.
yeah, I think just because with all genres and subgenres, there are like subgenres of the subgenres. And I think
Mhm.
extreme horror, because the idea I always used to get about extreme horror was like relentless depictions of long drawn out scenes of human suffering and stuff. And that's not always what it is. Not that there isn't an art to that as well, but that isn't my personal cup of tea. Um, so you deal with really, really heavy themes and you don't shy away from depicting certain things when it's relevant to the narrative or a character. But I just find that I would say that in terms of like the whole branch of transgressive or extreme horror, I don't think the actual content is really difficult to read. Um,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. I would say that At Dark I Become Loathsome is more I found that harder to read. But also
Okay.
I love the way that you deal with your themes. So it's if people haven't read this type of fiction before, I like just trust me. Like I won't recommend it to people I know will be triggered by something in here, but um
Yeah.
I'm like just take the label and the subgenre off it and just give it a go. Um
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people want to categorize things and put things like neatly in boxes. And so much of what I'm trying to do with my fiction is like be disruptive and be
mhm,
challenging and not neatly fit into those like perfect little boxes that everyone kind of wants to put me in. So like what you were talking about, extreme horror, like there is an art to that. There is an art to like books about putting babies in blenders and like, sort of snuff films and like
mm,
that disturbing sort of material. But what really inspires me and what gets me motivated and really lights me up is transgressive fiction that is a little bit more like sophisticated. So it's
mhm,
about, the emotional response to trauma, and it's about um, the desperation we feel when we lose a loved one to death or
Hmm.
to just a loss of a relationship. I find myself really drawn to those sorts of conflicts.
Hmm.
I grew up writing a lot of works for theater. Like I loved reading plays. I loved reading works by like Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller and Edward Albee. And I was saying this last night to a book club I was chatting to, but like so many of those plays feature really problematic and morally gray characters. And there's like such disturbing content in those pieces.
Hmm.
But that's where like the rich sort of drama lies, you know? And
Hmm.
that's where transgressive fiction, I think, like that's where my head is at when I'm creating this stuff. I'm not sometimes I am trying to be shocking. I will
Hmm.
admit, like I am intentionally trying to be shocking in some parts, but for the most part, I am really trying to dissect how we interact with one another after we suffer a loss or how
Hmm.
we move on from grief. That's what's really interesting to me as an artist.
Yeah, I think that's what I connect to so much in your writing because we've talked about empathy before, when we spoke before, and how reading and particularly horror fiction, it does give you this feeling of togetherness with the community,
Mhm.
even though reading is like a solitary activity. But the if you
Yeah,
connect to the work or the you feel connected to the author, and then you feel connected to the wider community. And I think grief and losing people, however you lose them through death or they're just not in your life anymore, but for whatever reason, there's still a grief process.
yeah,
And I think that's such a universal experience. And you're so good at tapping into it because I always used to say that nobody has ever made me feel grief when I'm reading because it's weirdly hard to um translate, even though we all understand. Well, we all will understand if we haven't already. We will all understand how it feels, but for some reason, it's one of those really difficult emotions to convey through a book. I don't know why. And I was saying for years, the only person who successfully managed to draw that out of me and make me really feel it is Stephen King with Pet Sematary. And then
Mhm.
along you come with with your work, and it just I always I feel a lot when I'm reading your work. And I think what was so interesting about this is so I don't want to spoil the book for anybody, so we'll try and avoid content spoilers too much. But the book pretty much opens with this horrible tragedy has happened in this town, and a lot of people have been lost. Um, so there was that angle of it, but I just felt like this was a lot about the people losing themselves. And
Yeah,
there's like a grief process there, which I've never really thought about before, is and in my written review and in the video review, which I will link below for anyone who's interested in my full book review, spoiler free, um, I talked about how this is all about thresholds and very significantly for me, what happens if you push yourself beyond one of your personal threshold, and then what do you
totally.
look like after that? And
Mhm.
we're dealing with some really rough stuff. So, do you want to tell people a bit about the book before we go further?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is the first installment of a trilogy of books that's going to be published by Titan Books over the next 3 years. And this first installment is called We Are Always Tender with Our Dead. And it centers around, it's set in the year 2003. It
Mhm.
starts in 2003 at Christmas time. And a horrible massacre occurs on Christmas Day with a lot of townspeople losing their lives. And the the story of the book follows the emotional and social decay of this community because of this massacre. So secrets are revealed over the course of the novel. More further transgressions occur because of this tragedy.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to get too spoilery, but if it the novel goes back and forth between one character who's 17. His name is Rupert, and he's struggling with his sexuality, with his identity, with living in this very secluded, isolated town, being a queer person, knowing that he's queer, but knowing that his father won't accept him. His mother has passed away a few years prior to the start of the book, so he feels really lost and sort of unfettered. And then it bounces between his perspective and then the wife of one of the wealthiest men in town, Gladys Esherwood is her name, and she is, like I said, the wife of a very influential man in this town of Burnt Sparrow. And the book is about how these lives sort of intersect around the midpoint of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And how they're very different from one another, but also still sort of tethered and like still kind of like in conversation with one another about like sexuality and identity and loss and just human suffering in general. But that's like the basic kind of overall bird's eye view of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I said, it's a deeply transgressive book with very flawed characters with very few redeeming qualities. I mean, those seem to be the kind of characters that I tend to gravitate towards, regardless of what kind of piece I'm working on. I really find myself compelled to write about very morally gray
Mm-hmm.
characters. As I said, I grew up writing a lot of theater, and so much of the theater that I read and watched when I was little featured those very difficult problematic almost characters. I mean, I think of like Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire. I mean, she's essentially a child predator.
Mm-hmm.
She is very flawed, a deeply flawed woman, and we kind of venerate her as this like icon of theater and like the work especially of Tennessee Williams, and she is all of that. But it's interesting how like the audiences for like theater can accept certain things as opposed to like the literary crowd, things that might be considered a little bit too obscene are
Mm-hmm.
considered like shocking and distasteful. And I think that's why I put that content warning letter in the beginning of the book, because I I do enjoy shocking people, and I want to offend people, but I don't want to cause any harm. I don't want to cause
Yeah.
any like irreparable harm by this book. So that's kind of like the overall view of the book, but I'm really excited for it to come out soon.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for everyone else to get to read it. I I think what I love books that make me think, and recently you've just been one of those authors for me where I just cannot stop thinking about your books after I put them down. Like I read this a few weeks ago now, and I've still just like on a daily basis been like, oh, and there's also that angle, and there's also that angle, and this might sound like an odd thing to say, but I feel like it's particularly relevant right now when we're in the height of uh, culturally what people seem to be accepting as behavior we're not really raising an eyebrow to. Like, I don't want to, I'm
Yeah.
not going to get political, but there are certain people who have most likely done some of the worst things imaginable and they still have supporters. And I I just like I keep connecting the themes of this book to like everything around me right now. And I yeah, the I I hesitate to even say villains because it's so complex. So
Yeah.
the people responsible for the massacre are immediately arrested. So there's not like a huge mystery about who they are, sort of. But there is, and we don't know, like going in, we don't know why they've done this.
Yeah.
There's more than one of them, and it's not the kind of people you would classically picture being responsible for a massacre. And I just initially I was like, oh my God, that is so interesting. I wonder what's going on. And then like the further I went in, I was like, I don't think the point is to get to the bottom of everything, actually. I think it's more about how I'm perceiving the crime, the victims of the crime, every what happens as a result of the crime, and I very often felt myself feeling quite sorry for them because of the punishment that the town decides on. And
I'm really glad you said that. And just to quickly interject, I really loved what you said in your review, in your video review about the one of the aspects of these characters that commit this horrible atrocity and how it sort of relates to how we strip people of integrity, of identity, of all of these things when they commit like a really egregious act, a
mhm,
really horrible transgression, and we render them faceless in a way. We render
yeah.
them without identity. And that to me, like that, like you totally understood what I was going for with this particular book. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just
Oh
wanted to
no,
like interject that.
no, and once like because of the way that you used that concept, I was in this constant state of feeling really conflicted because I think there were only a couple of people in the book that I was like, so everyone is a flawed character, which is always great because every person in the world is flawed, and
Yeah,
it's nice to see that. Some more than others in this book. So there was one character that I detested,
yeah,
absolutely hated, and but I kept like checking myself because I was like, I hate this guy a lot more than the people who did the crime, and I'm not sure if I should. Like I don't,
Mm.
and I kept thinking about, is it because there's such a mystery around these people, but with this guy, we're getting to know him, and I had empathy for some things, because everyone is the way they are for reasons. Um, but I couldn't figure out if it was because what he was doing was so out of the realm of anything that I could ever physically do, and I sort of repelled by it.
Yeah,
Um, and then once you see people as victims themselves, it is sometimes quite hard to balance it. Like I don't know, cause and consequence, crime and punishment. I just yeah, and yeah, but it's a really like I say fun, I guess. Yeah, it's a really engaging thought exercise.
yeah.
Um,
No, I loved what you said in your review just about how there's like this sort of moral queasiness in both answers
mhm,
to like, do people deserve to be punished forever
mhm,
for their transgressions? There's there's like kind of like an upset to that. There's like, there's something upsetting about thinking about that, you know? And then, but there's also something equally disturbing about the thought of someone who commits some horrible atrocity getting off scot-free and not suffering and not paying penance for what they've
mhm,
done. It's equally upsetting both ways. And this is what I love about transgressive fiction because it offers no easy answers for anything. And there
mhm,
are no easy answers in this book. But what I want you to do as a reader is sit with this discomfort and kind of acknowledge the fact that there are no easy answers. This is challenging to really reflect upon and ponder about. But that's our that's just the way things are in
mhm.
our in our universe, in our way of human suffering. That to me is really, it's proposing these really kind of intricate, sort of almost philosophical questions about what does it mean to take penance from someone
Mhm.
who deserves that penance taken, but how much do you take from them? And what's the right amount? There really are no answers. There are no easy answers.
Yeah, yeah, and especially when we're talking about the law and how things are handled when people are caught for crimes, and the way that they're punished, and like the whole point of the prison system, it's supposed to be rehabilitation. So you
Mhm.
serve your time, you are punished for the thing you've done, but you are supposed to be rehabilitated and then a socially acceptable person to go back into the world as. And
Mhm.
we know that that's not really what happens realistically. That people are locked up and they're not helped if they needed some kind of help or whatever. Um, but yeah, that idea of like what should the punishment for certain things be? How long should it go on for? Um, And I couldn't stop thinking about it because I had this raging argument with somebody about 15 years ago. We'd watched this Louis Theroux documentary about child predators that were like locked up in a specific facility.
Yeah.
And like the kind of people that will never be let back out into the world, like they sort of decided they just can't be trusted. And I was like, yeah, at least they're locked up where they can't hurt anyone ever again if they've been deemed such a danger. But the guy that I was talking to was like really angry about that opinion, and he was like, yeah, but the thing is, they've done their time. I, in this case, I kind of
Yeah.
like couldn't agree with him. I was like, yeah, but they haven't changed. So
Mhm.
like if you let them out, they're gonna do it again. Like if they're a danger to the public. And he kept
Yeah.
arguing with me that, but yeah, but they've served their time. So now they should be allowed to go on with their lives. And I was like, I felt like this for him was a weird hill to die on, to be honest.
Yeah.
In the case of these kinds of crimes. But I did think back to that because I thought like, you know, what would I personally do to somebody that had wronged me in some kind of like vicious way? I don't know. I don't know if I could do anything. So like, yeah,
Right. And I mean that's what the book is really talking about. Like what kind of threshold would you be willing to cross
hmm
to enact that sort of retribution for someone else that couldn't?
hmm
And just what sort of what are your limits just in general?
hmm
And like I mentioned before, there are no easy answers to any of this.
hmm
And these answers are not going to be spelled out throughout the course of the trilogy. They're going to be analyzed and sort of dissected, but I'm never really going to give you a definitive answer of what is right versus what is wrong because it's far too complex to really give an ultimate opinion on.
hmm
There are no like there's so much gray area. It's not just black and white. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if it should be black and white, really, because we are talking about human beings and yeah, it's but yeah, I think at the end of everything, I'm not at the end of everything because I'm still thinking about it so much, but I think that what the book does such a good job of doing is sort of making you think about where your own lines are. And I
Hmm.
don't think that that is a bad exercise to because I don't know how often people stop and actually think about like really think about consciously their own moral center.
Yeah.
And I don't think it can hurt for people to sit with themselves and think, well, is the worst thing I've ever wished on someone okay? Like, is this justified? Like, not that I sit here wishing horrible things on people, but you know what I mean.
Right.
I did talk a bit in my review about how in the case of people who hurt children, I tend to have zero sympathy whatsoever. I don't care. I don't want to know anything about these people. And I just like, yeah, just let them lock up and rot forever and ever and ever. And I'm not saying that I've changed my mind from that basic kind of feeling, but
Sure.
also if I saw, you know, uh, maybe this person has family that really depended on like there are always going to be other people in these equations and
Circumstances. Yeah.
yeah, and so for that I would feel oh no, like yeah, imagine being someone whose loved one has been locked up for life, but they deserve it, but then also this is all being inflicted on these people as well now, and I just yeah, it's so
It's so complex.
yeah. Um, there was a really, really interesting scene I have to be really careful to talk about because I do not want to spoil this, and I didn't talk about it in my review because I was afraid that I was going to talk too much. But there is, so sorry for everyone listening, but there's a point to why I'm asking about this. Um, there is a scene in a house where there's a superstition about
Yes.
walking through doorways, and
Yes.
that what happens in that section of the book was so fascinating to me that I'm still trying to kind of figure out what was going on. Um, what interested you? Because so this is like it's a really strong theme, this like thresholds idea throughout the book. What got you so focused on that and exploring it in quite literal and emotional ways?
I think because so much of the sort of transgressive, very extreme material that I love, it's all about limits and all
Mm,
about um, emotional limits, new frontiers in uh, in creating, in art. And so much of this is rooted in the idea of like thresholds.
mm,
And I really wanted to explore something with thresholds as a key ingredient to like the terror of someone's past and
mm,
someone's a key element to their suffering. And
mm,
I felt like that little section that you're talking about, that's like the root of that's like the root of the book to me. Is like the core, like the epicenter of the novel, of this
mm,
particular novel. It's really about uh what are you willing to do in order to cross certain lines? But once you cross those lines, are you able to go back to where you were prior to the threshold? And
mm,
once again, there are no easy answers here. I'm really interested in like asking a lot of my readers and asking a lot of questions, and I'm not always skilled enough to provide the right answer because I feel like there is no right answer.
mm,
And I think some readers maybe get very frustrated by that.
mm,
But I really want to like challenge people as much as possible, and I really want to make them confront their own sense of self and their own sense of identity and how they interact with one another, how they interact with the world at large. Um, that's what's really exciting to me as an artist is I get to have these sort of conversations with, hundreds, thousands of readers across the world.
mm,
Uh, and it's such an isolated activity reading a book, but like you said before, like it really is like there's a shared sense of community in it as
mm,
well. Um, and also, with all of that in mind, I also really love it in general when horror fiction uh, sort of subverts something that is so benign and so innocuous.
mm,
Similar to kind of what I did in Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke with the apple peeler. I
mm,
mean, that is now like an image in people's minds of something that's like grotesque and shocking and like the root of so much suffering and
mm,
calamity. I wanted something similar for this book. And to me, it felt like something it's quite literal, like a
mm,
doorway. Uh, but it felt so natural to kind of thread into this narrative as like this is a literal threshold.
mm,
And I've had so many people tell me that they walk through doorways now and they're like hesitant, they're hesitant to cross. And that's what I love. I love when fiction and film enter the public consciousness and like mutate how we view certain things.
mm. Yeah, what I took from that scene was that she literally crossed a threshold, but she'd been pushed past an emotional threshold, so she didn't take herself somewhere intentionally, but
Yes.
it was a result of what was happening with her in the moment. And the horror that ensues from there, I found it was weirdly comforting because sometimes I don't know. Do I tell this story? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. So when I was like late teens or maybe around 19, the only time I've ever done this, I slapped somebody. Not in self-defense, just pure rage, and I'm not proud of it. And I'm smiling because I'm really uncomfortable, and just telling everybody I did this. Um, I was in a bit of a argument with somebody, and I could feel like I suddenly understood what people meant, what they mean when they say like the red mist
Mm.
like comes over you, because I could feel myself getting like boiling, and I was like, I didn't think I was capable of like anything physical towards somebody else. But in the moment, and I said to this person, please stop, because I think I'm going to lose my temper, and I don't want to. I don't want to. And they kept going, and so I'm not saying like that they had it coming. There's no excuse for, putting your hands on somebody in anger ever. And I am very sorry that I did that still. But yeah, I just slapped this person, and it was in a moment of like I completely just lost my faculties for a second there. Like, and I I was so shocked at myself afterwards. And this part of the book brought me back to that, because I was like, yeah, this is like this kind of like shock of, oh my God, I've just crossed a line, and I
Mm.
didn't even know I could. Like it was and I've like ever since then I've worked so hard to make sure that like nothing really boils my blood very much anymore, because I don't want to
Get
go
to that
there.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could feel myself getting angry, I'm like, I need to just remove myself from the situation. Like, I'm not afraid that I'm going to get like really volatile. Like, I wouldn't consider myself a violent person or like at all, and it makes me uncomfortable if I see violence. But yeah, I was just so shocked at myself, and I think that's something that this type of fiction does when it makes you like takes you back to places like that and makes you think about like it made me feel like quite seen by you, because you were working with these ideas, and it just made me feel like not that it was okay that I did that, but just that it's that's maybe kind of a universal human, not slapping people, but like
Yeah.
that fear of like losing your temper. Maybe you surprise yourself in a moment of like extreme emotion, like not necessarily lashing out, but like, if you have a moment where you just get really overwhelmed, and all of a sudden everything's really dramatic to you or something, and you think, wow, that was later you're like, wow, I need to calm down. Everything was fine. I don't know why I got so um
Right.
yeah, so like that's still something I'm embarrassed about, but it made me feel a bit like, oh, I feel like there are other people that understand, like, I don't know, with the emotional headspace of something I was in, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And I'm really glad that you shared that story because I feel like it does kind of exemplify like the emotional thresholds that we do face throughout our lifetime.
Hmm.
Um, going past certain points that are shocking even to us where we're like, oh, I didn't know I was capable of doing that. Um,
Yeah.
and there's no coming back from that. There's learning from that and moving forward. But once certain things are done, they're done. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So that's yeah, I think that and I love that the book and I love that this book is kind of making you, even though it might not be totally pleasant, it's making you recall things from your life and from your history
Mm.
and using them as like reference points. And that's what in general is so uh wonderful about fiction in general because it's so intimate and it's so immediate. It's like, everyone brings their own set of history, their own sort of baggage
Hmm.
to the book. And what resonates with you is going to be so different than what is going to resonate with someone in I don't know, like Texas or Arkansas or Scotland. Like,
Hmm.
there's so many differences to how we approach fiction, and that's what's like so exciting about it. And these thresholds that I placed throughout the book, um, I almost feel like they're tests for readers. Like if you can make it past this page, are you ready to go past this
Hmm.
next section? You know, if you make it to page 120 something, are you willing to make it to page 200? Like,
Hmm.
it's almost like a gauntlet. It's like a literary gauntlet that you're going through. And I think that that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, I think that this will probably sound weird, but your books trigger the kind of like introspection in me that I don't mind telling people this, that I've had in like counseling sessions when you get like oh, that's why I'm like that, or oh, that's why I have this kind of response to these kinds of things. And I think I'm generalizing, but I would say that readers are probably quite introspective people
Yeah.
anyway. And so sometimes I think if you read something like this or like other transgressive works and it drags up sort of like uncomfortable memories for you because you're relating to something in the book. I don't think that that's it might be uncomfortable, but this is a thing I've learned with a therapist as well, is when you start feeling uncomfortable about some of your own behavior, that's a good turning point because you're like, okay, I that's maybe something I need to change then, or something I need to watch out for, or and it's all in, I guess, in the process of trying to become like a better person as you go forward. Because, like you said, you can't undo something that's been done. It's happened now, so it's all about how you proceed from there with that new information that you have about yourself. I'm laughing because I'm
Yeah.
still embarrassed about this. I can't believe I did that still. Like it's half my life ago and I'm still like, oh God, what an
And
asshole.
and I mean that, but that's, that's part of the human experience is making mistakes, but taking accountability for them, which it
Mm,
sounds like you 100% have, and
I
growing from
tried.
that and learning from that. What happens in We're Always Tender with Our Dead is many of these sort of characters with these very irredeemable qualities.
Hmm.
They pass certain thresholds, but they don't necessarily always learn from what they've experienced. And they kind of find themselves stuck in this permanent cycle of abuse and trauma and
Hmm.
more decay. And that's what I'm trying to really exemplify with these books is um, cruelty begets cruelty,
Hmm.
and trauma creates more trauma. And
Hmm.
it becomes this vicious, very unpleasant cycle, but it's up to us to try to break free from it. And that's the question I want people also pondering while they're reading these books is like, will these characters break free from their circumstances
Hmm.
or will they surrender to everything?
Yeah, and I think it's a really worthwhile thing to get people thinking about, even on like on a broader sense of things like I started thinking about things like cancel culture,
Mhm.
still very big for the
Yeah.
kids today. The well, I say the kids today, it's millennials probably, it's people in my bracket. Um, but this idea of what should people be punished for? What should that be? How what should that look like? And how should everybody else be approaching this? Um, I do, in general, I kind of oppose cancel culture in the sense of like somebody did something wrong, so now we never want to know that they exist ever again. And regardless of what like their crime was, like not literal crime, but like somebody like I don't know, Neil Gaiman, for example, has allegedly, but because that's all still pending, but like committed a really heinous crime. So people being like, right, I'm never reading a book by him again. I think, yeah, yeah, I'm never going to read a book by him again either. But then people digging up some stupid thing that somebody said 12 years ago on Twitter and being like, right, let's bring him down, boys. Let's get him a
Yeah.
career. And like somebody who may have done some work to they don't feel that way anymore about whatever it was they said, and they've changed or whatever. And I just think not everything is, not all crimes are equal, like
No,
socially.
and
And
I want to say something, and it's going to be very controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Mhm.
Um, Cancel culture exists
Mhm.
with really one intention, and it's to when there's a group of people that wants to cancel one person in particular, they
Mhm.
only want one outcome from that situation. They want the person in question to kill themselves. That's what they want. They don't want they don't want any sort of accountability from that person. They want that person to kill themselves. They
Hmm.
don't want that person to be like alive anymore. The shit I've seen with cancel culture online is so upsetting, so disgusting. It's to the point where it's unconscionable. It's
Hmm.
just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it happened like a week or two ago with a singer that I really like. Her name's Ethel Cain. I don't know if you know her. Um, she was canceled by a group of people, and she's an out trans woman living in the South here in the States. She said some things in the past that were pretty inflammatory, pretty bad. Um, and the people that kind of outed her had they have no there's like no room for grace in
Hmm.
any of this, you know? And I think that's the only part where I will come down on a certain side with anything with like cancel culture. Like I really find myself struggling to understand like the motivation for cancel culture in general. And but I think I did kind of I did explain like what the sole purpose of it is. Like they don't want any accountability. They don't care about an apology or any
Hmm.
sort of like uh retribution for what has been said or done. They really want the person to go away and just
Hmm.
not be in existence anymore.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree because when you see people online um getting really angry about things like I don't know, politics or groups that are working to take down people, like so there's a lot of pushback in the UK at the moment because they're changing laws regarding the rights of trans people, and people are really pushing get back against that. And I feel like, yeah, that kind of outrage is really justified because this is about whole groups of people having their rights
Totally.
and humanity stripped away. But when everyone, there seems to be a mob of people that have rallied against somebody that, I don't know, said something misogynistic 6 years ago, or
Come
like
on.
or a comedian that has made a joke that some people found distasteful. And I just
Let's grow up. Let's grow up.
yeah, I do think, well, we're canceling a comedian for making a joke. Like you don't have to watch the comedian. Like I've watched, there are like some subjects where and sometimes the jokes aren't funny, but I'm like, well, if this comedian isn't for me, I'm a little bit offended by some their approach to some things. But I just
Mm.
think, well, it's just not my cup of tea then. I can't imagine being like, right, let's tank their entire life, tank their entire life over it. It's.
It was especially just upsetting to see, like, I know I keep harping on it, but like Ethel Cain's
Mhm.
cancellation was just like very upsetting because that's an out trans woman living in the South in America.
Life is
And
already harder.
life is already really fucking difficult. And there's a mob of people sending her like death threats. And, that's the motivation. They want her to commit, like, do for them what they really want to do to her, like get their hands on her and perform like an act of violence. They want her to
Yeah.
just do it herself. And it's unthinkable. It's really unthinkable. And I think that's the root of we are always tender with our dead is, the punishment for some of these things. Would you be willing to put your hands on someone and cross
Mm.
that threshold and perform that act of violence for in the name of violence that has already been transgressed and has already happened? That's the cycle. More violence is going to happen because of the first act of violence.
Yeah, that's what I meant about how like work like this is really good for making you center yourself and think about your reaction to things um because emotions, if you get emotional, it overrides logic. And
Mhm.
people have very emotional responses to things. And I have learned just through experience, like just I was in the generation where like the internet got introduced to us And now
Mhm.
I'm seeing people growing up their entire childhood on the internet, and I'm like, all I can think is, thank God that wasn't an option for me when I
Same.
was 12. And because people, because sometimes, like, every now and then, Facebook will throw up a memory, and it's just me having some emotional outburst in a
Yeah.
Facebook post for some reason about, and I'm like, and I've changed my mind about most of the things that used to rile me up as well. So I'm like, oh God, that's
Yeah.
so embarrassing that I like, and the wherever people come down on this, but I kind of learned about myself that I could have the capacity to like foam at the mouth and want to see someone's downfall with that Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing.
Oh yeah.
Because when she initially made the allegations, I was like, well, of course she's telling the truth, because why would she lie about that? And whatever, like, I'm not saying, like, obviously it looked a lot different after they went through that whole process, and I was like, oh, so
Sure.
I still don't know. But what that taught me is I don't really believe everything she said, but also I'm not in the relationship, and I don't know why I got so invested
Hmm.
in wanting to see Johnny Depp taken down. And then I was like, oh, I want to see her taken down because I think she's lying now. And it brought out this like really horrible side of me. But I was like, oh, like I do think this can damage the Me Too movement. I do think this is horrible. The whole situation's horrible. But I just thought like I had to have a look at myself because I was like, am I much better? Like I'm getting on some moral high horse here, and then I'm like,
Well,
ah.
that's the thing. I mean, so many people want to feel morally superior to whatever they're criticizing. So this happens a lot in like the transgressive literature space, especially horror fiction. People will look down upon material that is very erotic, that is
Hmm.
very violent, very upsetting, and they claim like a moral superiority to what they're criticizing. And it's just none of it tracks. Like none of it is real. There is no moral superiority. I mean, Haley
Mhm.
Piper has said this many times before. You can't read your way into becoming a better person.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you can't pick up a book and find all of those things that you consider to be like your moral compass. You won't find it. You won't find yourself becoming better by the fiction that you read. Maybe as a writer, you'll be
Mhm.
better, but you can't read your way to becoming a better person by having characters that are not flawed, that are just perfect little angels,
Mhm.
perfect representation. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because those perfect characters aren't really representing anyone, really.
No, they're not.
So, yeah, that's my general thing is whenever whenever there's like I hear something terrible and there's news, I'm like not commenting on that for a while because
Yeah.
I've learned it's just not a nice side of me to come up. Like
Hmm.
again, surprised by how all of a sudden I was like, want to see Amber Heard taken down, and then I was like, oh my God,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
this is
Right.
between
And
them. I don't
it's
like.
interesting. It's interesting how we kind of bank on people's misfortunes sometimes. And
Mhm.
what does that say about us as human beings? I mean, that's just part of our DNA. Like there's a part of us that does want to feel superior to others in the food
Hmm.
chain of like life. Um, but are we actually the better person? Who's to say?
Yeah, it's a God. It's just such a it's a very deep subject, and uh, I think my overall takeaway from the many things I thought about with this book and like the little memories it triggered for me and everything, it was just I think understanding is the way forward. Um, and maybe a patient practice of empathy. Um, Not in all cases for everyone at all times, but just in general for how you conduct yourself in life and try and uh watch your own responses and emotional outbursts to things.
Yeah, be like more mindful. Be more
Yes,
mindful
thank you.
and um yeah, it's hard to make generalizations, obviously, because it's not a monolith, the whole
Mhm.
experience. Like it's not one single thing. But I think what you said is absolutely correct. Like there needs to be a sense of patience and um there needs to be more grace in how we respond to things and how we move forward from things and how we interact with one another.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a because I mean sometimes there are black and white situations like this person has
Sure,
done this and we know for a fact they've done it and the thing they've done is terrible.
sure.
Fine. But generally speaking, there's nuance. So,
There's nuance to everything, usually.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just such a great story outside of like themes and everything. I know I have to let you go shortly, but I could talk to you all day about this book. Outside of all of these themes and all of these lovely sort of like sectional parts that make you think about different things. It's also just a really, really interesting horror story. The small town aspect, I loved. I'm from a small town. Um,
Same.
yeah, and it's very I would like to think that it's sort of getting a bit more progressive as time goes on, but honestly it feels like it's a time capsule and you still
Totally.
don't see many different types of people. It's mostly just white straight cis people everywhere and it's noticeable if there's anyone different. That's like the level of like unbalance I'm talking about. Um
Mhm.
uh not noticeable in a bad way. It's just that you notice it because it's so unusual for here. If you hear anyone talking a language that isn't English and they don't have a Welsh accent, for example, um, and I something I loved. I know you said the book set in 2003, but there's this timeless feel to it as well, where because we have town elders and things like that, and I was like, this year I was like, I don't know when we are. I kept like
Yeah.
forgetting. I don't, but like I really liked that about it because it just felt like it. I guess this is kind of about universal human experience and truth, and I don't think that's changed probably, and will
Yeah.
change for much longer. So,
I mean, the whole aspect of Burnt Sparrow, it's this fictional town in the state of New Hampshire, and it really is supposed to represent like the United States as a whole. It's a little microcosm, little like small ecosystem, but it's really supposed to represent like the larger country as a whole and the way in which we memorialize, but also like fetishize these horrible tragedies, especially mass shootings in
Mhm.
America. It's a commentary on that. But so much of Burnt Sparrow is like very Twilight Zone coded. It's like, where it's not so much when are we, it's like almost like where are we? It's
Mhm.
like this place that's almost like purgatory. It's almost like this removed place that is kind of outside our like our own dimension. It's like another timeline, but it's like a skew off from the timeline that we're presently in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just it felt like it could be anywhere and nowhere. It could be anytime.
At
But
no time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought I thought that that really amplified the way all the characters are behaving and how they're experiencing everything because again human emotions are so complex and over hundreds or thousands of years I think people have probably not come too far from where we
hmm
started like we're still all a work in progress.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's such an interesting story. Such interest like that the inciting incident, I was just like, well, that's a stroke of absolute genius. And then our main character, Rupert, is just he's so easy to root for and you just want to see him have some wins. Like he's young and he's ex you know, he's experiencing things that like you can't unsee and unknow at an age where that's going to be particularly significant to how you develop. And
Totally.
yeah, so I just thought you just hit such a great winning combination of all of these different elements. And yeah, like once again, I do think that this is your like best piece of writing so far. And that's saying something because I think so much of your work and
Thank
your
you.
writing, and I've loved everything I've read from you for like similar but completely different reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just absolutely in love with it. I think I read it in one sitting. It's very unputdownable because I just had to know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. I love that. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I feel so privileged that I got to read it early. I was so excited when it arrived. If we can talk about, you have a book tour
I
coming up.
do.
So I just want to make sure that people know about that. And so where will you be heading?
Yeah, so I'm doing some dates here in the US in September. I'm going to be going to an unlikely story in Plainville, Mass on September 9th, which is launch day. And then a day or two later, I'm going to Austin, Texas with Gabino Iglesias at Book People.
Mhm,
And I'm going to be doing the following day at Exile in Bookville in Chicago with Daniel Kraus. And then I think a week later, I go to Springfield, Missouri for an event at a really nice library out there. And then at the end of September, I go to St. Pete's in Florida with Jennifer McMahon.
mhm.
So I'm really looking forward to that. And then in October, at the end of October, I do a little UK tour. So I'm so excited about that. I'm going to be going to London Comic Con on the 26th of October. And then the following night, I'm going to be in London with Gemma Amore and Laura Purcell.
Mhm.
I don't believe the event has been confirmed as of right now when we're
Oh.
recording this, but I'm sure by the time this goes up, we'll have like the info and like
Mhm.
they'll be able to buy tickets from like a specific link. And then the following night, I can't remember if it's Bath or Nottingham first, but I'm going to Bath and Nottingham the following two nights.
Mhm.
And those events are with Keith Rawson, who's an
Mhm.
amazing horror author. Um, he has a new book out that's coming out, I think, on the same day as this book, called Coffin Moon.
Mhm.
So I'm really looking forward to reading that and like chatting with him. So I'm just like so excited to go to the UK. I've been once before when I was a teenager, but I feel like I'm going to be able to actually enjoy myself and have fun now that I'm like an adult and I
Yeah.
can like go and do fun things in London and in the UK in general. So I'm really excited.
Well, we're very excited to have you here. I know lots of people are talking about it, and I'm sure that people are going to be really excited to meet you and get their book signed and get a new copy of this nice new bad boy. This is going to be hitting the shelves. Is it 9th of September this is out in the
Yes,
UK?
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, 9th of September, everyone. We are always tender with our dead, and then you can actually go meet Eric wherever you are, US or UK. Well, not wherever in the world, but US or UK. There are lots of options for you.
Just for now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. World domination someday, Eric, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, is there anything else that you would like to leave on just before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just very honored that you wanted to chat with me again. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. And I feel like you're so insightful and just so kind and always just so receptive to the art that I put out into the world. And um, it's really gratifying because not everyone is as nice as you.
Oh,
So it's really sweet. It's really nice. I love chatting with you and I can't wait to meet you when I come to the UK.
yes, yeah, really excited to meet you as well. I'm counting down to October basically when all of the things I'm going to are happening. Okay, so make sure that you pre-order this or pick up a copy. Make sure you catch Eric when he's in a city or a town near you, and I will put the links for the book Eric's tour dates, the other interview that we had, and my book review of this, and your website as well. I'll put all of those links in the description for anybody that needs to be directed somewhere. But yes, thank you again. It's such a pleasure talking to you. I love getting to speak to you about your books, and so thank you so much again for agreeing to do this and being here. And I'll catch you with your next book as well.
That sounds great. Let's do it again. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we're gonna sign off for you guys now. So bleed.